Hello, everybody. Welcome to Grow Up, Level Up, an interview podcast where I, Samson, interview guests about how games and fun grew people into who they are today. As in, how did the games of our childhood, or maybe the games of our adulthood, shape us into who we are? So, gaming, from tabletop to video games, are like $1 billion business worldwide, but I feel like it's not as held as highly as music or TV or other forms of medium. So the goal of this podcast is to highlight the unique life journeys of each person and how they integrate games into their lives every day. And maybe we'll find some value in games and fun. So in today's episode, I'm bringing in someone who is an inspiration for this podcast. He's a day one Overwatch player, a Mystery Heroes main. He's the host of not one or two, but 3 podcasts. And we are going to be chatting about why he wanted to start podcasting, how he balances podcasting with his other duties in life, including his full-time job and his most important job being a father. So please welcome Chris Lyteforce Golden. Yay!
Thank you for the introduction there, Samson.
Well, thanks for being here. Like this is a long time coming. I've been on one of your podcasts many times, and I feel like it's an honor to have you here.
The honor is all mine. I appreciate that you would even consider inviting a scrub like me, Mr. Heroes Main, as you described it, to join you.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Like jumping a little bit ahead for the audience, Chris is the host of a podcast I've listened to for, oh man, like 3-4 years. Ready, Set, Pwn. They are the premier source of all Vancouver Titans and Toronto Defiant news. Is that about right?
Yeah, your premier source of the Vancouver Titans and Toronto Defiant.
Ah, excellent. I hope to get to that spot one day where I can nail the intro like it's nothing.
Well, I mean, I've done how many episodes now with RSP, and then prior to that, I had years of practice doing my one of my other podcasts. So eventually, the muscle memory gets developed, and it's just like working in a call center and memorizing the introduction or what have you. It just rolls off the tongue.
Cool. I dig it. Muscle memory. That's true. So I have to ask first a question I ask all our guests. What are you drinking today for the podcast?
So I had to give it some thought. Like, what is it that I actually would be drinking an evening that I might be podcasting? And for me, it's the trusty old hot chocolate. I got a nice big mug here full of hot chocolate. Nothing special. It's just, I think it's like Carnation 5 ingredient powder with water. It's not extravagant by any way, shape, or form. There's no something in there to give it a little added punch. That's normally
wink, nudge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, wink, nudge. I mean, that might occur around the holiday season, like Christmas. Right. And I should, I'm not sure if you were going to let the cat out of the bag, but we're kind of in a holiday season right now.
Yeah. I'll go on to my drink. I was actually just going to bring water, but
I actually thought that too.
Yeah, it is a holiday season though. Well, tomorrow's Good Friday at the time of recording this. So I decided to celebrate by getting some Crush Orange. It was one of the only soft drinks in the fridge, but treat yourself. It's pretty much Friday on a Thursday night.
Yeah, the Crush colors are solid beverages. And they got the lime, Crush grape, Crush cream soda.
Yeah. I haven't had Crush in so long. It's actually quite sweet.
Yeah, it's sugar water with a lot of carbonation to really spice it up.
Yeah. Well, those are our drinks. Sounds like we got some sugar going. So hopefully this podcast is going to be super, hopefully not hyper, but anyways, I want to ask, what are your top 3 games of all time? It's a loaded question. Mm-hmm. Some of our guests have had some really in-depth answers. Some had some time to think, but for you, what are your top 3 games of all time?
So the game that really got me into gaming, and I mean it's not to suggest I wasn't a gamer prior to it, but the one that really got me into things was Dune 2, which was done by Westwood Studios. I can't remember, would have been like late 90s, early 2000s, real-time simulator. Nothing in relation to Dune 1, which came out only months prior, different style of game. But it really created that top-down RTS sort of experience that we've now come to love with some of the OG Warcrafts, the Command and Conquer series. I mean, there's so many. Annihilation. This was a one-off style game that was a pretty cool experience. Very similar to gameplay as Dune 2, but
Right.
that would have to be the top game for me. From there, Destiny, one and somewhat two. And I grew up playing Halo with my younger brother. It was sort of what we did. I was never really all that good.
Mm-hmm.
And then Destiny came out, and it was, the sci-fi genre that I really, really liked.
Right.
Came with a good story, and I ended up getting connected with a group of dads.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, I mean, we're about, I don't know, 20 some odd clans in game called Dads of Destiny. Just the way the system was, there was maxes. And so when all of a sudden it came out that there were all these like-minded dads wanting to play Destiny, I joined up with them. It was pretty cool. Got to connect with really a wide breadth of people I would have otherwise never really even, gone off mute for. And then I use that as the springboard into, Overwatch, which is, yes, a loaded answer in its own right, because I have a podcast. But if it wasn't for Destiny and that clan experience, I don't think I would have gone and really embraced the community side of Overwatch and the competitive scene. You wouldn't have Ready, Set, Home. So really, when we think about that, Destiny is what led into Overwatch and how I was able to sort of break out of my shell. I am very introverted, very shy, and I am more than likely not to say a word to anyone if given an opportunity. So I'm the guy who doesn't go into teen comms in games, and yet Overwatch was one of the few I did.
And and now you're leading people in discussion in your podcasts for someone who won't jump in. It's a different setting, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I look at it as more like facilitating the conversation. Like I'm a firm believer that one of the reasons why any of my podcasts has success is I do a really good job at finding smart people and I attach myself to them.
Cool. Oh, well, it's very, very humble of you. And I don't mean that sarcastically. That's very awesome. But I'm sensing a theme in your three games. They're all, and for the folks who are listening that aren't familiar with video games, Dune is it's a space themed resource kind of story. Destiny is also space themed, sci-fi, more good versus bad. What's the mystery? And Overwatch is kind of and also good versus bad, takes place in the future, lots of sci-fi elements. So I'm sensing a theme of futuristic sci-fi optimism, almost.
Yeah, definitely futuristic sci-fi optimism. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess it depends on the story of the day. Sure. But growing up, I was always a fan of Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, like
all the stars.
Well, yeah, stars really. And when it comes to sort of how it translates into my gaming experience, much of that as well. When we think of Blizzard, Warcraft, I played, Warcraft RTS. I did play a little bit of World of Warcraft for a spell. I mean, it's been out forever, so who hasn't at this point?
Right.
But I've always come back to the space. I like the sci-fi, but space is sort of
cool.
What sings to me.
That's awesome. So yeah, we can go on and on about space, but I want to bring it back down to earth and ask you, what do you do for a day job? Because I introduced you as the podcaster and the gamer, but that's not your full-time gig, is it?
No, I often describe myself as a hobbyist podcaster by night, but I'm an adult training professional by day. I've been involved in adult education now for coming up to 20 years.
Wow.
Which might date me for those that might be curious as to my age. But I sort of stumbled into adult education. I went to school, and my goal was to become a social studies teacher. I had a couple inspirational teachers in high school that I wanted to emulate. And I always enjoyed the social sciences, history more so, but I thought I'd do that. And during the first few years of my post-secondary education, I got involved in student politics and really enjoyed that too. So I became a professional student, took 5 years in a 2-year program. Not because my grades weren't good enough. It's that I started just taking classes to continue to be involved in the student political scene as to where I was.
Okay.
And, racked up some student debt. So I went and got this job working for Shaw Cable at the time. I guess formerly Shaw, now Rogers.
Yeah.
But in that call center environment, there was always opportunities to coach and help sort of those who were joining after. And it's a very transient work environment. People might work for a few months, decide it's not for them. Others will do it during the summer, go back to school in the fall. And I really enjoyed being that sort of coach, that mentor. Some of the leaders around the call center seemed to think I had a knack for it.
Cool.
Suggested, hey, why don't you help train some of our new hires? And next thing you know, I found that I had a passion doing adult education. And that's not to suggest that I had anything against the high school or even an elementary school experience. It's just I found a way to teach. And from there, worked my way up into a leadership role in the training space. Professionally got to an opportunity to work in tech. And then more recently, I'm actually working on the municipal side. So I'm sort of seeing a wide gamut. But in each of these spaces, I'm really, for lack of a better description, a trainer.
Not a Pokemon trainer.
No, I am not out there trying to collect and catch all of the people that come through my classes. But no, a trainer.
I think that's awesome and very, very cool because even though it's not social studies teacher for high school students, like you said, you are still using those skills and kind of following that passion you had when you were younger. And opportunities come up and you find new passions. And it now seems like it's brought you a lot of success being a trainer in the municipal side as well.
Maybe. I mean, it's still a relatively new role. Okay. I mean, one of the things that I've also experienced is the up and downs of the economic climate. So one of the things about the world of telecom is it's always shifting, even when you don't have, giant companies merging. Yeah. And then in the tech space, just over the past couple of years, it's been quite volatile. And unfortunately, found myself becoming a free agent, not by choice. And, right. I was fortunate enough to stumble into the municipal space. And if there's something I am now becoming more familiar with, is there's more stability in that world. There is a trade-off, but I think I'm at this point in my life where stability would be nice.
Cool. So, yeah. So, do you like the exciting part of the tech space? But now, I guess now you say you like the stability, but was something that drew you to tech was the ever-changing stuff? I know people try to sell that like it's a good thing, but there's some people that like stability.
Yeah, I enjoyed the change. Like, in telecom, and really, I mean, it's a form of technology. Let's be real here. The pace of change is significant, and that's simply because technology is continually evolving. The main difference between where telecom exists and the tech space exists is telecom is much more mature. I mean, Shaw has been in business since the 60s, and yes, the technology and the delivery mechanism and everything that you would get has changed. But when we think about the actual tech space, the Googles and what have you, their world changes and iterates on a daily basis. And I liked how everything was new and there was lots of opportunity. And I wouldn't lie. I think, one of the reasons why tech companies do attract a large number of staff is that the benefits and sort of the total rewards that they're able to provide are definitely more than some of the more stable or traditional employers out there in this space. But that trade-off is the volatility can also sometimes mean that what you're doing today is not what you're doing tomorrow, that change in what it is that you like, or alternatively, what you're doing today is not what you're going to do tomorrow because, you know, you've been found no longer necessary. And I mean, there is that trade, but I enjoyed it. And it's not to suggest I wouldn't consider going back to tech.
Okay. Yeah.
But I am, as I sort of said, at this point in my life where I think stability would be nice, at least for the time being.
Yeah. No, I totally resonate with that. Yeah, I was thinking in my head, the fun stuff is the snacks in the kitchen and the slide in the middle of the headquarters. You don't get that in government. And for me, like right now I'm working in tech, and yes, there's lots of flexibility and freedom. I work for a great employer. But when I worked in the school board, there was a lot of stability. Like I always get my summers off. We know what holidays are coming up that we get off. And you kind of know what you're getting into every day. There's a hard cutoff point, and that's nice as well. But you're right, different times in our lives. I want to talk a little bit about the podcasts you produce. I listed them off real quick earlier in the episode, but whichever one you want to start with.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the one that really got me started. It was the C4 Canucks Hockey podcast, and it was actually maybe not the first. I mean, the first sort of podcast was actually a video series called CHB TV, or Canucks Hockey Blog Television.
Oh, wow.
And it was myself and a few others that got together and chatted about hockey. I believe the episodes are still available on YouTube.
Cool.
If you were to search them out. But one of my sort of regular co-hosts that joined me, Clay Emo, he and I lived really close together, and we'd always talked about, you know, maybe we should go and start recording just an audio podcast. It'd just be easier for us to put together and produce. And, you know, we tossed the idea around, but never really did anything about it. And then one day, I just said, hey, you want to do this? I have an idea. I think we can make a run of it. He's like, sure. And lo and behold, Clay and I are sitting in my living room in Steaston recording our very first show. And that has now, you know, gone on for quite some time. I mean, just thinking back here, John Tortorella had just been hired as the new head coach of the Vancouver Canucks when we
That's
recorded our first episode.
That's a name I have not heard in such a long time.
It was the, you know, start of a season where at the end, the Vancouver Canucks do not make the playoffs. Yeah. And the first word of the chorus Dale, it's time to rebuild was dropped. That has not happened. But I am still every week during the Canucks season recording this show, dropping a new episode. And from there, you know, having had that experience podcasting and being this biased sort of Vancouver sports fan, we fast forward to when the Overwatch League goes live. I was passively following the league in that first season, but there wasn't a compelling reason for me to watch. There was no team in Vancouver. So lo and behold, Vancouver gets announced, and I'm like, this is awesome. I think I'm going to podcast.
Cool.
And Ready, Set, Pwn sort of came out of that. Trivia, Ready, Set, Pwn was actually a podcast about video gaming that I never got off the ground. I owned the domain for like just over a year. And I just essentially used what I already had available for the Titans podcast. Awesome. But unlike the Canucks one, my original intention was just to get it off the ground on my own. And I dropped in an episode. Hey, if there's anyone interested in joining me, let me know. Omni, Alex, he reached out to me. Sam, who you know, I'm sure, had said, hey, I'm interested in the three of us, you know, set forth. And thinking that I now had this podcast Empire the Third from Ready Set Pwn went to the Nerdy Dad Cast. And this one I actually connected with a longtime friend of mine that I had met through Canuck social media. And pre-pandemic, we had this idea. We were going to record every couple of weeks and really talk about our experiences in fatherhood. Then the pandemic happened. I kid you not, within 2 weeks of us going live.
Oh, is that close?
And we had to iterate on the fly. And it unfortunately is in a space where there is a significant pod fade happening. You know, my co-host, he actually relocated into the Kootenays. Cool. Not to suggest that we can't record virtually is. That's how we have done it. But it just became a little bit harder for us to coordinate. And then on top of that, me not realizing that you can't have as many podcasts as I do and still think there's time to manage your life and your daughter and all of that jazz. So something had to sort of be given away, and Nerdy Dadcast was it.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, still launching 3 podcasts and having the drive to do that, I guess, like, what made you, and I'm talking before the C4 podcast, what made you initially want to jump in and be part of that podcasting world, I guess?
People continuing to tell me that I have a voice for radio.
That's true. That is so true.
I'm not trying to pump my own tires, because the voice that I hear inside of my head is not one that I would suggest anyone would want to hear on the radio, but it was something that always sort of got brought up if people would hear me talk. And I actually worked for Starbucks for a couple of years, sort of in between working for the telecom and school. And I had some fun calling out drinks and beverages. And the store I actually worked in was the one at Richmond Center when it first opened up in the food court. And in the original food court in Richmond Center Mall, there was so much noise. It was an open space. So if I just called out a beverage, no one would hear. You had to be standing right there because there's too much noise. So I used my voice and I went radio announcer. And you would hear me, bellow out something like Domo Arigato Grande Caramel Macchiato. And it would catch people's attention. And from there, people are like, oh, you have a voice for radio. You should go into radio. You should consider us. No. Well, eventually I decided, okay, maybe I can do something with it. And that's the CHB TV. But video made it tough because we had to get together. We had all the equipment. Fortunately, one of the guys helped out, Ed. He did a lot of the production for us and really post as well. But then there was the complexity of his schedule and time, and it just wasn't something that we were able to maintain. So, getting into podcasting was me still wanting to do something and enjoying it and deciding I'm going to go and see if I can record audio, start there, and then produce. And that's really the early days of C4. Like if you listen to some of our first episodes, that podcast was a rough cut. I'm not going to lie. I had to learn. And a lot of times the learning was through falling flat in my face. And even RSP, there are some of the early episodes, you can hear drift issues, some audio artifacts that I just could not for the life of me figure out or didn't notice. And so, why did I get into it? The voice for radio, but then why do I continue to do it? Well, I used the term muscle memory earlier. I want to continue to maintain this muscle. It's kind of like working out, but I'm also trying to develop and train myself to be better.
That's awesome. I completely resonate with that. Just starting out this podcast, the first couple episodes, I'm sure if our audience is still listening now, they're not going to sound as good as this one. But you got to keep going to keep that muscle going, work out that muscle, figure out what's off, what's on. And then eventually it'll be good. And I think that as long as you keep doing it, it shows perseverance. It shows you have a drive to do it. And I think that's really awesome. And it's so cool that for you, I'm hearing that you were given this talent and you wanted to use it, and not only just use it as a benefit for others, but kind of use it to also improve your own skills and expand your kind of knowledge base. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. I take pride in what it is that I do, and being in sort of that learning space as I am in, you're almost trained yourself to continue to improve your craft, work on the tools that you're provided, look and find ways to use the tools you have in new and exciting paths. And that's really where podcasting has happened to fit in that sort of side of my life. And I feel it's also a good way for me to weave not only this voice, but in such a way that I can storytell. It's probably become apparent to those who are still listening. I like the sound of my voice when it comes to talking. I actually don't. The internal voice I hear a little bit different, but I really like to weave and yarn together a solid tale. And I feel that when it comes to training, I'm, relating to that story and learning
Hmm.
something that connects to something that we can visualize is much more of a substantial learning experience than one as to which where it's just words on paper or words on a
Totally.
screen.
Totally. Yeah. No, like, well, most of us grew up learning through stories, whether it's nursery rhymes or like watching a movie on TV. And like stories are how people learn. And
Mhm.
if you can tell a good one, like that makes you a great teacher.
And I'm not trying to say I can tell good stories, because there are storytellers that I listen to and I aspire to be like my
Yeah.
my wife's uncle. My goodness, if he could fire up a podcast just to share all of the knowledge that he possesses and his ability to tell a story, it is just, you sit there and it's like, wow, this is unbelievable. That's what I aspire to do. Not there yet, not
Cool.
even close, but getting to that point where just the experience is infectious is the
Mhm.
exciting sort of goal to strive for.
Cool. Well, I can't wait for the Lightforce Storytime podcast coming 2024, maybe? No.
No, I mean, you jest, but I mean, I have had podcast ideas
Mhm.
that have got as far as like domain registration and such.
Yeah.
But again, there's only so much time one can invest when you have a hobbyist gig that doesn't really do much more than take money out of your wallet than put money into it.
Fair enough. I guess let's jump ahead a little bit because you brought it up a couple times. But how do you balance being a dad, having a full time job, podcasting so much during the week, and like, but podcasting including editing and putting stuff out and managing social media, as well as following the Canucks and the Vancouver Titans? How do you manage all that time?
I don't. Um, it was a lot easier before Baby Force, my daughter, obviously arrived on the scene.
Yeah.
All I had at the time was just the one podcast,
Mhm.
the Canucks one, and I have slowly had to renegotiate sort of my individual time and effort into what it is that I do with all of the different podcasts. But it's really built around structure. Like I could tell you almost by clockwork as to when episodes will go live, when we're recording. Everything
Hmm.
is scheduled, planned, not weeks in advance, but weeks out. So there's a rough
Mhm.
sketch with each one
Mhm.
of them. But as far as when something goes askew, it becomes
Mhm.
much more difficult to triage and remedy. So let's say, you and I were recording an episode of RSP and we experienced technical issues.
Mhm.
There's a greater likelihood that that episode may never get off the ground, and
Mhm.
then the apology note goes out because there's just no time left in my schedule to either re-record, and then if we re-record, how am I going to find the time to produce
Right.
and all of that. As far as paying attention to what's going on in the world of Vancouver Canucks, the Vancouver Titans, Toronto Fine, Overwatch League, what have you, thankfully PVRs and VODs exist. And
Mhm.
I watch and fast forward and sort of consume um, in, ludicrous speed sometimes.
The 2x, 2.5x.
Yeah, where the opportunity exists. So, I will, oh, I got 15 minutes here. Let's see what I can, quickly consume and jot some notes down with. It is more and more difficult.
Mhm.
And I won't lie, there are going to be times where I will concede on a show, hey, haven't been able to keep up.
Mhm.
And thankfully, those that I work with, we have a good cadence where we always ensure one of us does, and then we lean on
Mhm.
them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it's like a little bit of a team project to get those podcasts successful. But like I'm also hearing like life happens, right? Like
Mhm.
things come up, things out of control, like other people need to be taken care of, and that's okay. Like it's no big deal if the nothing goes according to plan every week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I am a prime example of life happening. I've had some personal health challenges in the
Mhm.
last few years, and my family has, and then technical issues have occurred, and what have you. And at the end of the day, I think what's most important is life. I mean, this is just a podcast. It's not, you know, life or death if an episode doesn't get pushed out. I used to stress a little bit about it. Like with RSP, we used to publish an episode at high noon on Tuesday. And that was it. And then what I found is I was setting a very arbitrary time that didn't quite coincide with how my day-to-day and the day job would exist or my life. And so now I'm less critical on the high noon part. But an episode generally goes live on Tuesday at some point, or Wednesday, sorry. Tuesday is when the Canucks podcast goes live. But that flexibility is something that I've come to allow myself. And I use the word allow not in the sense that I have to grant myself permission per se, but I remind myself that it's okay. The community that's established around these shows will understand. And while I know there might be a few who, oh man, where's the episode? Because their routines are built around the show.
Right.
I don't think any one of them would be too upset if they were to understand, like, oh, Chris's daughter was under the weather, or, you know, day job took priority. I don't think anyone out there would be too upset by those reasons.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great to hear that, like, your community understands the, I don't know if human limitation is the right word, but they understand, like, on the other side of the mic is a person with other responsibilities and more important responsibilities. So that's awesome that your community is like that.
I hope it is. I might be making a wild assumption here, but really, I mean, if for some reason the communities that support the shows were not understanding, you know, there's plenty of content that can be consumed out there, and there are many professionals in the space, and I would encourage them to find that professional who's made these commitments because, you know, there's a financial connection or what have you. I'm just a guy who thinks he's got a voice that sounds good on the radio, plays video games for fun.
No, that's awesome. So talking a little more about sports. I think we're similar, and we both hail from Vancouver, and we have a lot of Vancouver pride. I'm actually new to the sports scene. I actually started following, I call it meat sports, after the Vancouver Titans got established. And I'm like, oh, what's with this hockey thing they've been doing? I've been hearing about my whole life. But for you, like, what keeps you interested in professional sports year after year?
If I were to be honest, I actually haven't a clue. I am
that's a valid answer.
No, it totally is. It's a question I even ask myself, like, why? Like, if there's one thing that has become synonymous of a Vancouver sports fan, and I paint with very broad generalizations here. There's a lot of tough times and misery involved. Yeah. And success is few and fleeting when it does occur. I think for me, you know, growing up, I was involved in different sports. I mean, it's what my parents got me into to keep me out of trouble. And from there, I also started to enjoy watching and consuming sports content, whether it be with my dad or my mom or my grandfather or what have you, just sort of the thing to do. And then when I started sort of seeing my social circle expand, going through school and friends from sports and such, some similarity and similar interests started to exist. And from there, that maintained it. But if there's something that I were to suggest has been the glue all along, it's the ability to experience it in a social setting, which I think is what has kept me most engaged. I grew up with a bunch of friends from high school, and we'd always talk about the Canucks or talk about the BC Lions. And that was sort of what we did the Vancouver Grizzlies for a short spell.
Miss those guys.
I mean, this is what we'd talk about. And then, NFL season, we'd fire up. We'd talk a little about what's going on, down south, and baseball, maybe what might be happening in Toronto or in Seattle. And, but that's what we did. Or we'd go to the restaurant or bar or whatever, and we'd watch. And then as we sort of all have grown older, we don't necessarily connect as often as we used to, but if there's something that could bring us together, sports tends to be it. So it's that social connection, I think, is what I crave. Not so much like, oh, I must watch the Vancouver Canucks today. Right. I can't miss the Whitecaps match. That's not really what's driving me. It's the the ability to go and hang out with people I enjoy hanging out with.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally see that. I've been finding that too. Like growing up, I wasn't the most athletic guy, so I was like, oh, I'm not impressed by all these sports things. But as I get a little older, it totally is the social aspect, an excuse to go out to catch up and enjoy something together. That's not a movie or not a um, what else do people concert.
Mhm.
It's the social part of coming together and just watching some, well, frankly, like superhuman stuff going on, um and spending that time with friends. So that's really cool to hear. um yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you think about going to a movie with friends, there's a good chance you're not connecting with them
Mhm.
beyond sitting nearby while you're consuming content in a relatively, dark and silent
Loud.
cavern.
All right.
I go to a restaurant, there might be some casual conversation, what have you. You go to
Mhm.
a concert, maybe a little conversation, but more lip reading than anything else. Um, you go out clubbing or something like that, hit the bar. Like there is social connection that exists, but
Mhm.
there's often something that can get in the way.
Right.
Whereas the consumption of sports, you could be watching a game and talking about everything else. Um,
Totally. Yeah.
and it's just something that's easily done. I mean, we might get into it when we talk sort of on the esports side, but that's one of the things that I feel is what brings people together in the sense of esports is that social connection. We can talk about some commonality, Overwatch or whatever it happens to be,
Mhm.
and connect in a space that otherwise we would have never seen our paths come anywhere near to.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, let's dive into that. So, Overwatch League, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you may have heard me talk about Overwatch League before, but it is a franchised sports league for the video game Overwatch. And this one is interesting because for this league, they decided to kind of base their teams out of real cities. So we mentioned Vancouver Titans. There's also the LA Gladiators, and there's the I was going to say Philadelphia Fusion, but they're gone now.
No, no more.
Toronto Defiant,
There we go.
as well as Asian teams like the Guangzhou Charge, Shanghai Dragons, Seoul Inferno, and Seoul Dynasty. So it's a global league, and they base themselves out of cities. And how Chris and I met was we were both Vancouver Titans fans. I was searching for more content and more community around this franchise, and yeah, that's how we kind of met, is through esports. And it's not that we were playing the game really. We watched the game and followed the game outside of the servers and found community there. So
Yeah, I mean, and not to suggest that the two of us may not have found our paths crossing at some point, but the likelihood was much lower had it not been for the Vancouver Titans,
mhm.
right? I think, with esports or gaming in that sense, it's just another means to bring people together, and
Mhm.
do so beyond sort of our standard, demographics.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I guess some people dive into a little hot topic. Some people still don't consider esports like a sport. I think the word sport in there kind of gets
Mhm.
tricky. How do you feel about that controversy, that dilemma that this
Yeah.
esport can be considered a sport just like the NHL, NBA?
Yeah, I understand that there are some who look at the word sport as requiring some form of physical amplitude taking place, and I don't discount what they're suggesting when they go and posit sports over esports that way. I've also talked to some who have been involved in esports and within the scene itself who would talk about it as entertainment or professional video
Mm,
gaming and such. And they do that because in their mind, there's two things at play. One, esports is frowned upon. But then
mm,
also maybe in an acknowledgement that sports, meat sports as you might call it, traditional sports is often what I refer to it as,
yep.
has its own place. And really, yeah, there are very many comparables that exist between the two, but I don't think one needs to be forced into the other space.
Hmm.
But I refer to the Overwatch League as an esport.
Mhm.
I refer to my podcast as an esports podcast.
Mhm.
Esports exists as a definition in the dictionary. And if you don't believe me,
That's
look
true.
it up in Merriam-Webster.
Yeah.
But the thing that's most important about it is, I think, an appreciation that it does require a high level of aptitude to perform.
Mhm.
Simply picking up a controller and plunking yourself down does not make you good at that activity. You
Yeah.
need to invest time, effort, practice, build that muscle memory. I don't skate. I
Mhm.
never actually learned how, which is odd being, Canadian born and raised, but I never, thought of myself as becoming an NHL hockey player. I might have had dreams
Right.
that, oh, maybe I am really good. I just need to learn how to skate first.
Right. Right.
But we dream of that, but we don't expect it from day one.
Hmm.
Professional video game players are in that same space. Some
Mhm.
comes easy, but they still have to grind away, work at the craft. They have to become the best in that space. Poker, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there's often an argument that is poker an esport, or not esport, a sport, right? I mean, this was before esports.
Yeah. It's on
Whether-
ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, whether poker is a sport or not matters very little. Some people
Right.
are good at it, some people are great, but most who just pick up the cards for the very first time are likely neither.
Mhm.
And it requires a lot of effort in training yourself, being able to read others, understanding, the game before you
Mhm.
become really, really good. And that journey will vary. Well, again, that's what I think is what's key. It's that journey and the experience and what you gain from it. And then in turn, if we think about it as a fan perspective, do we enjoy it? Great. That's what's most important. Is it
Right.
the social connection that continues to bring us back? Great. Is it just an interest, wanting to become better and using it as a means to help hone our own craft? Phenomenal.
Mhm.
It's just whatever it is that, gives you that level of enjoyment. That's what's most important.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I never thought that sports can be seen, or games, I guess, looping it back to the topic, games can be seen as different things to different people. For some, it's a way to make social connections, an excuse to get together or meet new people. It could be a motivation to get better at it for yourself, or it can be a way to just enjoy and have fun and just appreciate the spectacle of it all. I think, yeah, and I brought that up, the sports esports comparison, because I think some people get so hung up that sports have to be, it's the best of the best. It's all about competition. And if you're not doing a certain thing, it's clearly not valid. But uh, as we talked about, sports can be, and games can be, so many things to so many people. And most importantly, it's about the people and coming together and getting better. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, talking about games, I guess. How have video games, or I guess we're on the sports train. So how have sports, video games, tabletop games, whatever, impacted your life and made it positive?
Yeah, tabletop games, not so much. It's one
Oh,
area I
okay.
never got into. Gaming, when we think about video games, always really been from entertainment perspective.
Okay.
I'm old enough to, answer the question by saying some of the first video games I played happened to be on a Commodore 64 and television or Coleco. The first gaming system I owned was a Nintendo Entertainment System.
The
Got it for
OG.
Christmas. Yeah. From my grandparents, hooked it up to my black and white TV. That was downstairs in our basement. I got real good playing Mario Brothers, or actually it would have been Super Mario Brothers if I were to be more appropriate, and Duck Hunt.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
I remember those. Those are great games.
Yeah. Back when consoles came with multiple controller types and 2 free games included. But gaming as a means to connect with others didn't really exist until I got into PC gaming. That's
Okay.
not to suggest that I didn't play video games with friends. They'd come over, or I'd go over to their place. Some might have a Sega, another person has a Nintendo. That person's got a TurboGrafx 16.
Hmm.
All of those different consoles. A handful of people had computers, but PC gaming really wasn't as well placed as I was growing up until I got into really my late high school and early university years. But PC gaming allowed me to connect first with friends. Like when I first started playing Warcraft, a buddy and I would essentially, one of us would call the other via our modems, and we would play 1v1 in Warcraft. And then when Blizzard introduced BattleNet, that was when it really took off.
Mm.
And the multiplayer experience on console started to really amplify. But I wasn't playing the games and connecting with people at that point. I was very shy. I was introverted. And as I got older, I had, less and less likelihood of wanting to engage with someone who's going to tell me everything that's horrible about me and what they're doing with my mom or my sister or what the like. And it's just, It wasn't a space that I was interested in. So it wasn't really until I got into World of Warcraft that I started to engage with sort of a clan. And why that I think was important in the gaming space for me is that growing up with sports, I always had my team. I love team sports. I had my soccer team. I had my softball team. I connected with them. I saw them all the time. I would go out as I got older. We'd go out to restaurants, drinks together. Played floor hockey. Cause I'm like, this is the stuff I enjoyed. It's that social connection. I was never really too concerned about being the best player. I think there were times when maybe I was good at the level I was in. But what I enjoyed the most was being part of the team, contributing to the team dynamic, helping the team succeed in whichever way I could. It's why I got into coaching at a young age. Okay. And it was that, social connection that existed. Now we fast forward to where we are today. And I mean, I have podcasts that are focused on the sport of hockey and, the esport of the Overwatch League. And I connect with an audience that's much broader and wider than I could have ever imagined. I connect and speak to people regularly in these communities that I would have otherwise never spoken to. I often, with Ready, Set, Pwn, talk about being the old man, of which, quite honestly, the fan base would probably posit is very true. But, when we think about it, there are young fans and old fans alike, and we found some commonality that we enjoy, shooting the proverbial about, and agreeing that Reinhardt is the one true hero for all situations at any game or shape or form in Overwatch.
That's awesome. So for like games and stuff, it was the social connection that's always been the motivator for you to keep going back. It started with your friends, you found it in teams, and now you kind of see it more in team sports and the communities around it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, gaming has always been entertainment based, but the titles that I've probably invested the most time in and continue to return to are the ones that allow me to connect with my friends, my social circle. And I'll use Destiny as a really good example. That group of people that I connected with and would talk to on a regular basis, we sort of split up or fractured or grew apart, depending on the perspective. And as I found myself no longer connected to that social group, the gameplay sort of died off. I don't play Destiny anymore because I don't the draw for me just playing it on my own wasn't strong enough to continue to do that. Yet Overwatch, which as you let off, I'm a day one player, I've continued to go back to because there's a social circle for me to connect with. There are people I enjoy talking to. If that didn't exist, and if that didn't exist, I probably would have moved on to Minecraft or something like that.
Minecraft. Well, Minecraft is going to be around forever. That's for sure. People that do like spend their entire social time in Minecraft.
And I'm not knocking it, please. If you are a person who loves playing Minecraft, I actually really enjoy playing Minecraft. But there's a social piece that I enjoy the most. And when it becomes just me, it's like, well, I'm kind of bored. What next? Which is why I'm so excited that my daughter is taking an interest to Minecraft.
Cool.
Because that might be the first father-daughter gaming experience, and that excites me like no tomorrow.
Oh, I hope that goes well, because Minecraft is like I started playing a lot of Minecraft when I worked in schools, just because every kid was playing it, and it was such an easy way to bond with the kids and build relationships. And like me knowing the slash commands made me the cool teacher. No, that's awesome. Have you ever heard of the phenomenon where like once or twice a year, like a friend group will just be like, we should make a Minecraft server and do that for a week?
Yes. So one of the gaming communities I'm a member of, we did just that before Christmas. And it's like, yeah, we should get to, who wants to do this? And I was like, I got a spare server. Let me spin it up.
Yeah.
Within like an hour, you had like a dozen of us all logging in, building out the world. Yeah. And by the time the new year rolls around, we're all moving on to something else. So for 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, we were all in on Minecraft.
There's got to be like a term for that, or someone's got to be writing this down, because I feel like every friend group, maybe gamer friend group, it happens. It's like a universal thing that happens.
Well, I mean, RSP, we had a Minecraft server because there was a long Overwatch League off season, and hey, y'all want to play Minecraft? Sure. And we had quite a few people engaged that period of time. And then, the whatever occurred after a short while, and suddenly no one was using it anymore. So.
No, it's the circle of life, the circle of Minecraft server life.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, we're going to close out here. I think you shared so much cool insight and knowledge into not just podcasting, but pretty much the reason why games and sports exist. It's to bring people together, make new memories, build connections, and maybe meet people that you aren't necessarily going to cross paths with, as you say. I think that is such an amazing insight. I'm going to close out with 2 fun questions. One of them I actually stole from you. I don't know if you read ahead. But I'll start with the trickier one first. So maybe one day I become extremely rich. Maybe I won the lottery or something, and I want to invest in you, Lyteforce, in a game that represents your life. But you get to be the director. So you get to pick the genre, gameplay, graphics, sound, everything. What kind of game would it be? And we can workshop this a little bit. I had another guest in an earlier episode. We kind of hashed it out and kind of came up with something cool. But what game would you like to make?
So I like the retro style. And while I didn't sort of reference the style of game when you first asked me what my favorite titles would have been, sort of like the Police Quest, King's Quest, Curse of Monkey Island style games from Sierra back in the day. That style would be it. So we're going to talk about kind of like a Stranger Things vibe in this sort of, not really a full side scroller. Like there will be some sort of 3-dimensional play into it, but it's got the retro feel, some 80s synth music. It's definitely kind of like an RPG in that sense.
Is it like a point and click as well, like Monkey Island? And
kind of like Monkey Island would be. And then you'd have like there'll be like sort of puzzles and what have you that you have to work through. I think that's sort of what I would want. I don't imagine it has absolutely no market and very few people would be interested in it, but it would be that sort of vibe, that style. I miss that. Like I miss the simplicity of games back then. Like, I mean, they weren't simple when I was playing them, but there was some artistry that's now lost with many of the mass-produced titles. Like, we see duplication and replication because it works, and I don't fault the development path.
It's business.
Yeah, exactly. But the artistry that once existed is maybe fewer and farther in between. But there is something to be said about games that last forever, and many of them work within that formula. Like, Grand Theft Auto, I expect to be playing GTA 5 when the PlayStation 7 comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be there forever.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a game kind of in the 80s, point and click. It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be about an RPG. It's got puzzles. That sounds good.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be in the 80s per se, but that sort of style or vibe. Like I said, Stranger Things, because I think that the younger audience might connect with that. The older one would probably be like the Breakfast Club feel.
Okay, yeah. Oh, so is it going to be kind of like what? Now the name escapes me. Like something about finding yourself or the self-discovery kind of journey?
Yeah, definitely. Like a journey of self-discovery and exploration, so to speak.
Cool. Explore the world, the beautiful handcrafted pixel art world.
Yes.
Awesome.
I think the graphics there'll definitely be pixel art, but it'll be more modern, not the actual hey, look, you can tell that that's a person because there's a little thing square that pokes out and that's the nose.
There's 2 dots in a circle. Those are the eyes.
Yeah, no, it might be a little bit better than that, but I do like that, pixel graphic or voxel would be the more appropriate modern term.
Cool. Have you ever played a game? It's actually getting a re-release. It's called Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. It came out on the DS many, many years ago. That might scratch your itch. It's not necessarily like Breakfast Club growing up kind of story, but it is a murder mystery and it is point and click. They're re-releasing it soon, and I played it when I was a kid on the DS, so I'm dating myself. But it's something that might interest you. Okay. Voxel graphics too. All right, last question. As I said earlier, I stole this from you, but what's your one piece of wisdom you like to leave with the world?
Gosh, I ask this question all of the time. I ask it on all of my episodes and all of my podcasts. And it's one that I always struggle to answer with. I often will drop wisdom as it relates to the topic of the day. But like in a general sense, like what is the word of wisdom? I think it's one word: jump. If given an opportunity to do something, jump at it. If you ever have a choice of should I, shouldn't I, jump at it. Now, I'm going to tie in some pop culture. With great power comes great responsibility. Don't do anything your Uncle Chris won't. But no, take the plunge. I feel that growing up, I chose the safer path more often than not. And while I can't say that I missed out on anything, I know there was much that I didn't get to experience. And, I kind of wish I had heard that advice myself and taken it to heart at a younger age. That's
awesome. That's beautiful way to end this podcast. Thank you for joining me, Chris. I think you dropped a awesome piece of wisdom at the end, but there are nuggets of wisdom throughout this episode that I think people can go back and watch. Thank you again for joining me. This has been awesome. And thank you for supporting my project here and joining this jump with me. As we close out, where can people find you?
If you're looking for me on social media, I'm at Lyteforce. That's Lyteforce. But if you're looking for the podcasts, ReadySetPound.com, sorry, Titans Defiant Podcast, C4 podcast.com is the Canucks podcast. And if you were curious about my advice and talk as a nerdy dad, nerdydadcast.com has all the episodes there as well.
Awesome. And for me, audience, if you want to find more episodes like this, you can actually follow me on Instagram and Twitter now at Grow Up Level Up. Also on YouTube at Grow Up Level Up. If you have any comments about how the episode went, good or bad, I would love to know and get better. You can message me directly at SamsonXP on Instagram, Twitter, wherever at SamsonXP is. And yeah, I hope you join us for the next episode whenever it's ready. Once again, Chris Lyteforce Golden, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.